The void of space stretched endlessly before the Deathworlder fleet, a silent expanse dotted with stars that shimmered like distant diamonds. Captain Cal Draven stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eclipse Blade, staring out at the infinite horizon. His sharp eyes scanned the holographic displays floating around him, searching for anomalies in an otherwise routine patrol mission. It had been months since their last encounter with anything remotely interesting or dangerous. But today, something was different. A faint crackle broke through the static of the comm channel. At first, it sounded like interference, the kind caused by solar winds or ion storms. But then came a voice, distorted, fragmented, yet unmistakably alien. Save us, perish. The words repeated over and over, chilling in their urgency. Cale leaned forward, his hand gripping the edge of the console. Source, he barked, turning to Lieutenant Mara Voss, his second in command. She tapped rapidly at her controls, narrowing down the signal's origin. Her brow furrowed as she processed the data. It's coming from Sector 42G, she said finally, glancing up at him. That's deep in uncharted territory. No known colonies or outposts there. Uncharted doesn't mean empty, Cale replied grimly. He tapped a button on his wrist pad, activating the ship-wide intercom. Attention all hands. We've received a distress signal from an unknown sender located near Sector 42G. Prep the fleet for investigation. This could be nothing or everything. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. The Deathworlder fleet consisted of 6 heavily armed vessels, each capable of tearing through enemy lines with ease. They weren't explorers. They were mercenaries, hired guns who thrived in chaos. Still, even hardened warriors like them couldn't ignore a cry for help, not when it might lead to answers about what, or who, lurked beyond the edges of known space. As the fleet charted its course toward the mysterious signal, strange energy readings began to appear on their sensors. Flickering pulses of radiation disrupted navigation systems, forcing engineers to recalibrate constantly. Some crew members whispered nervously about old legends, tales of ships disappearing without a trace after venturing too close to this region. Others dismissed such talk as superstition. But unease rippled through the ranks nonetheless. When they finally arrived at the source of the transmission, the sight took their breath away. A planet loomed ahead, its surface scarred by jagged mountains and rivers glowing with toxic green hues. Lightning streaked across its crimson skies, illuminating vast craters and ruins that hinted at a once thriving civilization now lost to time. It looked less like a refuge and more like a graveyard. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Sergeant Tarek, one of the Marines stationed aboard the Eclipse Blade. His bulky frame filled the doorway of the bridge as he peered at the viewscreen. "You sure we should set foot here, Captain?" Cale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the desolate landscape, his mind racing. Whoever, or whatever, had sent that SOS was still out there, and if they were desperate enough to call for help, chances were good they wouldn't welcome visitors with open arms. "We'll send down a recon team first," Cale decided aloud. "Armored suits, full tactical gear. If this is a trap, I want us ready for it." Mara nodded, already relaying orders to the rest of the fleet. As preparations continued, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger and far deadlier than any of them could imagine. Whatever awaited them on that hostile world, one thing was certain: it would change them forever. The recon team descended onto the alien planet's surface in a flurry of thrusters and dust. The landing zone was a barren plain surrounded by jagged cliffs, their edges glowing faintly under the eerie red light of the stormy sky. Captain Cal Draven watched from the bridge of the Eclipse Blade as his Marines fanned out, scanning for signs of life or danger. Their armored suits were equipped with advanced sensors, but even those struggled against the planet's erratic energy fields. It didn't take long to find something unusual. Beneath a cluster of crumbling ruins, a hidden entrance yawned open like a wound in the earth. The recon team approached cautiously, weapons drawn. Inside, they discovered what appeared to be an underground bunker, dimly lit, damp, and filled with strange machinery that hummed faintly despite its apparent age. And then they saw them. A group of creatures emerged from the shadows, their forms gaunt and frail. They weren't human but vaguely humanoid, with elongated limbs and translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Their large, hollow eyes locked onto the intruders, exuding both fear and desperation. One stepped forward hesitantly, raising a trembling hand. "You came," it said in broken common tongue, the universal language used across the galaxy. Its voice was raspy, almost mechanical. "We sent signal. You must help us." Sergeant Tarek tightened his grip on his rifle, keeping it trained on the aliens. "What are you?" he demanded. "And why should we trust you?" "We are survivors," another alien replied, its tone pleading. "Our world, destroyed. Aggressor hunts us. Please, take us away from here." Before anyone could respond, one of the Marines, a young private named Rin, let out a sharp cry. He stumbled backward, clutching his arm where a small, worm-like creature had latched onto his flesh. It wriggled furiously, sinking tiny barbs deeper into his skin. Panic erupted as the team scrambled to pull it off, but the parasite clung stubbornly, its body pulsating unnaturally. "Get it off me," Rin shouted, panic rising in his voice. Kel's voice crackled over the comms. "Containment protocols now. Do not let that thing spread." But it was too late. Within moments, Rin collapsed, convulsing violently. His screams echoed through the cavern as his body began to change. His limbs stretched unnaturally, his skin darkened and cracked, and his eyes turned black as coal. When he stood again, he wasn't himself anymore. A grotesque hybrid loomed before them, snarling and attacking anything that moved. Chaos broke loose. The recon team fought back, narrowly managing to subdue the mutated soldier before he could harm anyone else. Meanwhile, the aliens cowered behind debris, shouting apologies and explanations in fragmented sentences. "Not our fault. Parasites everywhere. We warned. No safe." Back aboard the Eclipse Blade, Kale listened grimly to the reports streaming in from the ground team. The situation was spiraling out of control. Whatever these parasites were, they posed a grave threat, not just to the mission, but to the entire fleet. Yet the aliens insisted they had nothing to do with the outbreak. Whether they were telling the truth remained unclear. When Kale addressed the crew later that day, his expression was hard, unyielding. "We came here to answer a distress call," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Instead, we've walked into a nightmare. But we don't abandon missions or people because things get messy. We adapt. We survive. And if necessary," he paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, "we fight." The crew nodded silently, steeling themselves for whatever horrors lay ahead. As the ship prepared for further exploration, one question lingered in everyone's minds. Was this truly a rescue mission, or had they been lured into a trap? The next morning, Captain Cal Draven led a second expedition deeper into the alien ruins. This time, he went himself, unwilling to risk another disaster like the one that had claimed Private Rin. Armed with enhanced scanners and containment units, the team moved cautiously through the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the planet's surface. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with an unidentifiable metallic scent that made their helmets' filters whir loudly. The deeper they ventured, the more the ruins revealed their secrets. Strange carvings adorned the walls, twisting patterns that seemed alive under the flickering glow of their helmet lights. Some depicted towering figures wielding what looked like weapons or tools, while others showed scenes of destruction. Cities crumbling, skies burning, creatures fleeing in terror. It was clear this civilization had faced annihilation. But at whose hands? Then they found it. At the heart of the ruins stood a massive chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center loomed an artifact unlike anything they'd ever seen, a pulsating obelisk made of black crystal, taller than two men standing on each other's shoulders. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if it were breathing. As Cale approached, the hairs on his neck prickled. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous in the way a weapon might be, but invasive, as though it were probing his mind. "What is this thing?" Sergeant Tarek muttered, his voice tight with unease. He raised his scanner, but the device short-circuited almost instantly, sparks flying from its casing. "It's not just tech," Cale said, his eyes fixed on the obelisk. "It's alive." As if responding to his words, the artifact began to hum softly. Faint whispers echoed in the chamber, not in any language they recognized, but somehow understandable. Words formed in their minds, disjointed and fragmented. "Destroyers approach. Salvation lies within. Join us." Cale stepped back instinctively, raising a hand to silence his team. "Don't touch it," he ordered sharply. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't benign. Meanwhile, tensions flared among the alien survivors aboard the fleet. Confined to a secure holding area, they grew increasingly agitated, pacing like caged animals. When questioned further, they admitted they'd known about the artifact all along. It was why they'd sent the distress signal. According to them, it had been buried by their ancestors to prevent catastrophe. But now, something had awakened it, and they feared it would consume everything, including them. "They're hiding something," Lieutenant Voss told Cale later during a private briefing. She leaned over a holographic map of the ruins, her expression grim. "Why didn't they mention this artifact before? Why wait until we stumbled upon it ourselves?" Cale rubbed his temples, exhaustion creeping into his features. "Maybe they thought we wouldn't believe them. Or maybe they were testing us, to see how far we'd go for answers." Mara crossed her arms. "Either way, I don't trust them. They've already cost us one man. How many more will follow?" Her words lingered uncomfortably between them. Before Cale could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A security officer rushed onto the bridge, panic etched on his face. "Captain, the aliens, they've breached containment. They're trying to access the power core." Cale sprinted toward engineering, his pulse pounding in his ears. When he arrived, he found the scene in chaos. Two of the aliens were attempting to reroute energy from the ship's reactors, their frail hands working feverishly at the control panels. Security teams surrounded them, weapons drawn. "What are you doing?" Cale barked, stepping forward. One of the aliens turned to him, desperation written across its gaunt face. "We must destroy it," it cried, pointing back toward the obelisk. "If it awakens fully, no one will survive. You must help us end this cycle." For a moment, Cale hesitated. Destroying the artifact might save them, but it could also doom the fleet if they couldn't extract the necessary power to leave the planet. Yet leaving it intact felt like inviting disaster. The choice weighed heavily on him, and he knew whatever decision he made would change everything. Back in the ruins, the obelisk pulsed brighter, as though aware of their indecision. Time was running out. The tension aboard the Eclipse Blade reached a boiling point. Captain Cale Draven's decision to delay destroying the artifact had split the crew into factions. Some believed they should focus on neutralizing the threat, no matter the cost. Others argued that risking their lives, and the fleet, for aliens who couldn't be trusted was reckless and unnecessary. The debate raged late into the night, voices growing louder in the cramped corridors of the ship. Lieutenant Voss stood at the center of it all. Her loyalty to Cale had always been unwavering, but even she struggled to reconcile his orders with the mounting dangers they faced. She paced her quarters, replaying the events of the past hours in her mind. The alien survivor's desperation, the mutated soldier snarling as it attacked its own comrades, the artifact pulsing like a living thing. All of it gnawed at her resolve. When she finally made her decision, it wasn't out of malice but survival. Early the next morning, Mara gathered a small group of officers loyal to her cause. They met in secret, huddled around a dimly lit table in an unused cargo bay. "We can't wait any longer," she said firmly, her voice low but commanding. Kale is letting emotion cloud his judgment. If we stay here, we'll lose more people or worse, the entire fleet. But what about the captain? One officer asked hesitantly. He won't just let us leave. Mara's jaw tightened. Then we don't give him a choice. Hours later, alarms blared across the fleet as Mara executed her plan. Leading a contingent of Marines, she seized control of 3 ships, including her own vessel, the Iron Talon. The rest of the fleet scrambled to respond, but by then it was too late. Communication channels crackled with shouts and accusations as Cal confronted Mara over the comms. "What are you doing, Lieutenant?" Kale demanded, his tone icy with betrayal. "Stand down immediately." "I'm saving what's left of this fleet," Mara shot back, her face appearing on the view screen. Her expression was calm but resolute. "You're blinded by curiosity, Kale. That artifact isn't worth our lives, or anyone else's. I'm taking my ships and leaving. Anyone who wants to come with me is welcome." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Kale sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of the situation. He knew he couldn't stop her, not without starting a civil war within the fleet. And deep down, he understood where she was coming from. Still, the sting of betrayal burned fiercely. "Fine," he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Take your ships and go. But leave behind anything non-essential: fuel, supplies, weapons. Whatever you take, you'll need to survive out there. Because if you abandon us now, don't expect forgiveness later." Mara nodded curtly, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of regret. "Understood. Good luck, Hale." As Mara's ships disengaged from formation and disappeared into the void, Kale turned to face his remaining crew. Morale was low. Whispers of doubt filled the air. Many wondered if staying behind was the right choice, or if they were walking straight into a death trap. But Kale refused to falter. Standing tall on the bridge, he addressed the fleet. "Some of you may agree with Lieutenant Voss. Maybe you think we're wasting time or risking too much. But hear me now. This isn't just about saving those aliens or uncovering some ancient relic. This is about finishing what we started. We came here for answers, and I intend to find them, even if it costs us everything." His words resonated with some, reigniting a spark of determination. Yet others remained uneasy, glancing nervously at the planet below. The artifact continued to pulse ominously, its energy readings spiking higher than ever before. Whatever power it held, it was growing stronger, and so was the sense that time was running out. Back aboard the Iron Talon, Mara stared out at the retreating image of the fleet. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain. Had she done the right thing? Or had she abandoned her comrades to face unimaginable horrors alone? Only time would tell. With Mara and her ships gone, Captain Cal Draven focused all his resources on unraveling the mystery of the artifact. His remaining crew worked tirelessly, setting up portable labs in the ruins to study the pulsating obelisk. The alien survivors, now subdued after their failed attempt to sabotage the fleet, reluctantly cooperated, though their fear was palpable. They warned Cal repeatedly about the dangers of tampering with the artifact, but he ignored them. He had no choice. The fleet couldn't leave without answers. Late one night, while most of the crew rested, a group of scientists conducted tests on the obelisk. Their goal was simple: determine if it could be safely deactivated or destroyed. But as they probed its surface with advanced scanning tools, something unexpected happened. A faint vibration rippled through the chamber, growing stronger by the second. The carvings on the walls began to glow, casting eerie shadows across the room. Then, a deafening roar shook the ground beneath their feet. "What's happening?" shouted one scientist, stumbling backward as the obelisk flared with blinding light. Before anyone could react, the floor split open, revealing a cavernous void below. Out of the darkness rose a colossal form, a leviathan unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its body was a grotesque fusion of organic flesh and metallic plating, writhing tentacles stretching toward the ceiling. Eyes like molten gold glowed along its length, each one radiating intelligence and malice. It wasn't just alive, it was aware. Kale arrived moments later, alerted by the chaos. He froze at the sight of the creature, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "By the stars," he whispered. The Leviathan let out another thunderous roar, shaking debris loose from the ceiling. As it moved, the air itself seemed to warp around it, distorting reality. Then, to everyone's shock, it began to speak, not with words, but directly into their minds. "You have awakened me," it intoned, its voice both soothing and terrifying. "I am the keeper of salvation. Submit, and I shall grant you dominion over all." Panic erupted among the crew. Some dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as visions flooded their thoughts. Images of power, glory, conquest. Others screamed, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the Leviathan's presence. Kale gritted his teeth, fighting back against the intrusion. He knew this wasn't salvation, it was manipulation. "Get everyone out of here," he barked, grabbing the nearest scientist and shoving him toward the exit. Now. But escaping wouldn't be easy. The Leviathan's tentacles lashed out, smashing equipment and blocking pathways. One scientist was caught in its grasp, lifted off the ground as the creature examined him curiously. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the man dissolved into ash, consumed entirely by the Leviathan's energy. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Blade, alarms blared as the ship's systems detected massive energy fluctuations emanating from the planet's surface. Lieutenant Commander Solis rushed to the bridge, her face pale. "Captain, whatever's down there, it's spreading. The planet's atmosphere is destabilizing." Cal's comlink crackled to life. "We need extraction, Captain," came a frantic voice. "It's attacking us." Hesitating only for a moment, Cal gave the order. "All units, fall back to the landing zone. Prep the shuttles for immediate departure." As the surviving crew scrambled to escape, the alien survivors performed an ancient ritual, chanting in their native tongue. Their voices echoed through the ruins, creating a strange resonance that momentarily weakened the Leviathan's hold. Sparks flew from its body as it recoiled, roaring in fury. "This won't hold it forever." One of the aliens shouted to Kale, "You must destroy the obelisk. Only then will it die." Kale clenched his fists, torn between retreat and confrontation. Destroying the artifact might stop the Leviathan, but it would also mean sacrificing any chance of understanding its power. And if they failed, the entire fleet, and possibly the galaxy, would pay the price. As the last shuttle lifted off, carrying the battered remnants of his crew, Kale stared down at the glowing ruins. The Leviathan loomed above them, its golden eyes watching hungrily. Whatever battle awaited them next, one thing was certain. They were no longer dealing with mere survival. They were facing extinction. The Eclipse Blade hovered in low orbit above the alien planet, its hull battered and scorched from the chaos below. Inside, Captain Cal Draven paced the bridge like a caged predator, his mind racing with possibilities. The Leviathan had awakened, and every second it grew stronger. Its tendrils of energy were spreading across the surface, corrupting the atmosphere and destabilizing the planet's core. If they didn't act quickly, the entire world would collapse, and take them with it. "We can't just sit here," Kale muttered, slamming his fist against the console. "There has to be a way to stop that thing." Lieutenant Commander Solis stood nearby, her expression grim. "Sir, the alien said destroying the artifact might kill the Leviathan. But how? We barely survived getting out of there once. Sending anyone back inside is suicide." Kale turned to her sharply. "Then we'll make sure whoever goes doesn't come back." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Everyone on the bridge understood what he meant. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to destroy the obelisk. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had left. Before anyone could volunteer or protest, a transmission crackled through the comms. On the main view screen appeared Lieutenant Mara Voss, flanked by her crew aboard the Iron Talon. Her face was pale, her usual confidence replaced by guilt and resolve. "Kale," she began, her voice steadied, despite the turmoil behind her eyes. "We made a mistake leaving you. That thing, it's not contained to the planet anymore. We've detected bursts of energy heading into space. If it spreads further—" "I know," Kale interrupted, cutting her off. His tone softened slightly. "You don't have to explain yourself, Mara. What matters now is stopping it." Mara hesitated, then nodded. "That's why I'm coming back, and I'll lead the mission to destroy the artifact." Kale stared at her, stunned. "You're not serious." "I am," she replied firmly. "This isn't about redemption. It's about doing what needs to be done. You've got fewer ships and resources than before. My fleet can provide cover while I handle the detonation." For a long moment, Kale said nothing. He wanted to argue, to tell her no, that he couldn't lose another friend. But deep down, he knew she was right. They needed every advantage they could get, and Mara's return gave them a fighting chance. "All right," he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. "But if anything goes wrong, you pull out." "Understood." Mara smirked faintly, though her eyes betrayed the gravity of the situation. "Don't worry, Captain. I'll make sure my death counts for something." As preparations began, the fleet regrouped around the planet. Mara led a small team back to the ruins, armed with explosives designed to overload the obelisk's energy matrix. The alien survivors accompanied them, guiding them through hidden passages to avoid the Leviathan's wrath. For now, inside the chamber, the artifact pulsed violently, as if aware of their intentions. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into monstrous shapes that whispered promises of power and destruction. Mara ignored them, focusing solely on setting up the charges. "You sure this will work?" one of her marbles asked nervously, glancing over his shoulder at the looming Leviathan. "It has to," Mara replied, securing the final charge. She tapped her earpiece. "Kale, we're ready. Get everyone clear." On the bridge of the Eclipse Blade, Kale clenched his fists tightly. "Good luck, Mara." She smiled faintly, even as the ground trembled beneath her feet. "See you on the other side, Captain." With that, she activated the countdown and sprinted toward the exit. Behind her, the obelisk began to fracture, its dark crystal surface cracking under the strain. The Leviathan roared in fury, lashing out with its massive tentacles. But Mara didn't look back. She ran faster than ever before, knowing full well that time was running out, not just for her, but for everyone. As the first explosion rocked the chamber, lighting up the planet like a second sun, Kale closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt truly alone. The explosion tore through the alien ruins with devastating force, sending shockwaves rippling across the planet's surface. For a moment, it seemed as though the obelisk and the Leviathan had been neutralized. The artifact's pulsating glow faded, and the monstrous creature reared back, its golden eyes dimming as if wounded. But just when hope began to stir among the crew of the Eclipse Blade, alarms blared once more. "Energy readings are spiking again," shouted Lieutenant Commander Solis from her station on the bridge. Her fingers flew over the controls, analyzing data streaming in from the planet below. "It's not dead. It's regenerating." Kale clenched his jaw, frustration boiling beneath his calm exterior. He had trusted Mara to complete the mission, but now doubt gnawed at him. Had they underestimated the Leviathan? Or worse, had something gone wrong? Before he could process further, chaos erupted aboard the fleet. A sudden power surge coursed through the Eclipse Blade, disabling critical systems and plunging parts of the ship into darkness. Crew members scrambled to restore functionality, while others fought off an unexpected threat: mutated creatures that had somehow breached the hull. These abominations, twisted hybrids of wildlife and machinery, moved with unnatural speed, their glowing eyes fixed on destruction. "What the hell is happening?" Kale barked, grabbing the nearest officer by the arm. It's coming from within, the officer stammered, pointing toward engineering. Someone sabotaged the reactors. Cal's blood ran cold. Sabotage. On his own ship. His mind raced through possibilities until a familiar voice crackled over the intercom. Captain Draven. The voice said smoothly, laced with venom. I've waited a long time for this moment. Cal froze, recognizing the speaker immediately. It was Aaron Draven, his estranged sibling and former second-in-command who had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. Rumors had swirled about her involvement with a shadowy galactic syndicate known as the Obsidian Order, but Cal had refused to believe them. Now, standing face-to-face with betrayal, he realized the truth hit harder than any weapon. Oren appeared on the view screen moments later, flanked by armed mercenaries clad in black armor. Her sharp features mirrored Cal's, though hers were hardened by years of ruthless ambition. Behind her stood several key engineers from the Eclipse Blade, traitors who had secretly aligned themselves with her cause. You always were too sentimental, Cal, Aaron sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. That artifact isn't some relic to destroy. It's a tool. With its power, we can reshape the galaxy, end wars, bring order, and enslave everyone in the process. Cal shot back, his voice low and dangerous. You think domination is salvation. Aaron shrugged nonchalantly. Call it what you want. History remembers victors, not ideals. As the siblings exchanged heated words, skirmishes broke out across the fleet. Aaron's forces seized control of vital areas, locking down sections of the ship and cutting off communication between teams. The remaining loyalists rallied around Cal, determined to retake their vessel despite being outnumbered. Amidst the fighting, one thing became clear. Aaron wasn't acting alone. She revealed that the Obsidian Order had been monitoring the artifact for decades, using the alien survivors' distress signal as bait to lure unsuspecting explorers. The entire situation, the rescue mission, the Leviathan, even Mara's return, had been orchestrated to ensure the artifact fell into their hands. You led us straight into a trap, Cal growled, his fists clenched tightly. No, Aaron corrected, her lips curling into a cruel smile. You walked yourselves into it. I just made sure you stayed long enough to serve my purpose. With time running out and the Leviathan recovering far faster than anticipated, Cal faced an impossible choice. Should he focus on stopping Aaron, or risk everything to finish what Mara had started? Both paths promised loss, pain, and sacrifice. Yet deep down, Cal knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next would define not only his legacy, but the fate of the galaxy itself. The battle aboard the Eclipse Blade raged with ferocity, turning corridors into war zones. Loyal crew members clashed with Aaron's mercenaries, their shouts and blaster fire echoing through the ship. Smoke filled the air as explosions rocked the vessel, sending sparks raining down on both sides. Captain Cal Draven fought alongside his people, wielding a plasma rifle with grim determination. Every shot fired was fueled by anger, not just at Aaron, but at himself for failing to see her betrayal coming. Aaron, meanwhile, moved like a shadow through the chaos, her movements precise and calculated. She had always been the smarter of the two siblings, her mind sharper than any blade. But where Cal valued loyalty and honor, Aaron thrived in deception and manipulation. Now she used every advantage at her disposal to tighten her grip on the fleet. Cal, she called out mockingly as they crossed paths near the engineering bay. Her voice carried over the din of combat, dripping with mockery. Still clinging to your ideals. How quaint. Cal spun around, leveling his weapon at her. His eyes burned with fury. You've gone too far this time, Aaron. This isn't about saving the galaxy. It's about control. And I won't let you destroy everything we stand for. Aaron smirked, raising her own weapon casually. Oh, brother, you never understood what it means to lead. You're stuck in the past, clinging to notions of heroism that don't exist anymore. The galaxy needs strength, not weakness. Before either could fire, a deafening roar shook the ship, silencing everyone momentarily. The Leviathan's presence loomed larger than ever, its corrupted energy seeping into the fleet's systems. Lights flickered wildly, and strange whispers echoed through the comms. It was clear. The artifact wasn't destroyed, and the creature was growing stronger by the second. Realizing they couldn't afford to waste more time fighting each other, Cale lowered his weapon slightly. If we don't stop that thing now, none of us will survive. Not me, not you, not anyone. For a brief moment, Erin hesitated. Her expression softened, revealing a flicker of doubt beneath her hardened exterior. Then, with a snarl, she shoved the thought aside. Fine. Let's settle this later, she spat, gesturing for her mercenaries to fall back. But know this, I'm doing what's necessary. When the dust settles, history will call me a savior. As Erin disappeared deeper into the ship, Cale turned his attention back to the mission. The obelisk needed to be destroyed completely, and soon. He rallied what remained of his loyal crew, devising a desperate plan. They would overload the Eclipse Blade's reactors and crash the ship directly into the artifact's core. It was risky, suicidal even, but it might be the only way to end the threat once and for all. Back on the planet's surface, the alien survivors performed another ritual, channeling their collective energy to weaken the Leviathan temporarily. Their chants reverberated through the ruins, creating an eerie harmony that seemed to slow the creature's regeneration. One of them approached Cale via comlink, their voice trembling with urgency. "You must hurry," the alien pleaded. "Our strength fades. Without us, the Leviathan will consume you whole." Cale nodded grimly. "We're coming. Hold it off as long as you can." Inside the ship, Cale confronted Lieutenant Commander Solis, who volunteered to stay behind and ensure the reactor overload sequence completed. Her decision left him torn. Losing her would devastate the crew, but he knew she was right. Someone had to make sure the detonation succeeded. "You've always been the heart of this crew," Cale told her quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let them forget why we fight." Solis smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Just promise me one thing, Captain. Make sure it counts." With the countdown initiated, Cale led the remaining crew toward the escape pods. As they launched away from the doomed flagship, he looked back at the Eclipse Blade, watching flames engulf its hull. The sight filled him with sorrow, but also resolve. No matter the cost, they were going to finish this. In the distance, the Leviathan stirred, its golden eyes blazing brighter than ever. It sensed the approaching doom and roared in defiance, lashing out with renewed fury. The final confrontation was upon them, and Cale knew there would be no turning back.